open the Redevelopment Commission meeting. Could you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Could we do the roll call?
Commissioner Lack?
Here.
Commissioner Ambler? Here. Commissioner Josviak? Here. Commissioner Munt?
Here.
Mayor Bonta?
Here.
And Commissioner Vasquez.
Let's see. Did everyone have a chance to look at the minutes from February 22nd? And would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All right. Let's take a look at our payment of claims. Did anyone have any questions or points?
On the general docket, can we remove the third page, the Cronin Associates payment?
Yes, and just to give a little bit more feedback on that too. So they actually reached out yesterday and requested for that to be taken off. So that would work out just fine. They want to assess if they actually did work for us, which is a very good reason not to be on the claims docket. Any other comments or review?
Make a motion to approve the claims, removing that one item.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? And we're good. If we can go with our staff reports, let's start with Mr. Sender.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the commission. Thank you for having me here today. What I have for you is the annual report of the Redevelopment Commission activities for 2023, and I believe this is in your packet. This is something each year the commission is to kind of review. It's kind of at a high level of your financial activities for the past year. And also we have included in here a section for the overlapping taxing units if they so choose to come and want to ask questions about your tax increment allocation areas. So I'm just going to quickly go through the report, and then I'll just kind of allow you any opportunities to ask any questions. So page 2, just as kind of summarizes, we look at what the activities, the commission members and employees during the last year, cash, revenue, and expenditures, any debt that's outstanding, and then also it's a full listing of all the parcels that's in your Southport allocation area. Page 3 just lists the members from last year, and then page 4 is just a listing of the commission employees and their salaries. Page 5 shows the tax increment revenue that was received last year, and that was a total of $8,038,238. And then the next several pages, just from pages 6 through 9, is a listing of all the bonds that are outstanding of the commission. And it shows what your payments were during 2023, outstanding principal, when's the final payments. Then page 10 is just a quick financial summary of the different funds of the commission, showing your beginning balances as of January 1, the revenues received for the year, disbursements, and ending balance. And I'll just quickly highlight that your redevelopment general fund ended the year with cash of $1,090,615, and your allocation area fund is $7,505,969. And then we just have a listing of the resolutions that were approved during this last year. Page 13 is the budget, and I believe later on, under new business, Dan's going to do probably more complete listing of the budget. I'll just quickly highlight that the general fund for this year, proposed budget $735,240. For the NERC property is $274,350, and then the allocation areas are $7,377,700. And so I'll just probably defer to Dan when he gets to a more detailed budget that he'll probably go over with the commission. But this, again, is just at a high level. It's one of the required things that we're to include is the budget for this coming year. The next section is kind of the overlapping units. It was introduced several years ago where if any of the taxing units have questions about our allocation areas, we provide some information. So basically, we're to include the budget, which we just showed. What are the long-term plans and the tax impact? Well, as I think most of you know, one of the purposes of the commission is to stimulate economic development and redevelopment in the city. And by having some of our TIF areas, specifically the Southport allocation areas, we're able to offer incentives and also to address problems in parts of the city to help stimulate growth and economic development. The tax impact reports are a little bit strange to look at, but the statute does want to say, if we did not capture the tax increment, what's the impact on the tax rate? And so we've done that on pages, well, it's Exhibit A, B, C, and D. And we show kind of what is the net percent variance, or I'm sorry, the tax rate if we did not have this allocation area. And that, again, is just for the commission's benefit and anyone from the public who wants to know. I think one of the arguments you could say, if we didn't have the $335 million of incremental increase in assessed value to use those revenues that we wouldn't be able to make some of the improvements, and we may not have attracted some of the companies to come to Portage had we not made these allocation areas and incentives available for developers and businesses to come into the city. Exhibit B just shows the impact on the CUME funds at the Porter County level, the airport, and at the city level, again, if we did not have these allocation areas. And then the last section on exhibits E1 through E12 is just a listing of all the parcels, shows what the gross assessed value, net assessed value, the incremental assessed value. And for 2022, pay 2023, we had $310,226,215. So that's kind of the report in a nutshell. Components of this report will get uploaded, like the parcel listings all get uploaded into the Department of Local Government Finance Gateway website, and we'll be assisting to do that so the clerk treasurer can certify that this annual report has been posted in Gateway. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and if there would not be any questions, I would ask for maybe a motion to approve the report. I know the next action item says approving the annual report, but that next resolution is actually to notify for next year that we're going to need all of our tax incremental increase in assessed value in order to make payments on our bonds, as well as further activities here that the commission has planned for next year. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board? Not, do we have a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All right, so then we do go then to the next action item, which would be consideration for the 2401 approving annual report. Would that be correct?
It's really it's our TIF capture notification letter or resolution that basically determines that we're not able to release any of our AV to, in other words, we want to capture all of it so we can collect the increment to continue making our payments on debt service and further the activities of the Redevelopment Commission next year. The third item is there's a letter that I think Dan will be sending out to the Porter County Auditor to also notify the auditor that we will be needing all of our increment for next year. And it also goes to the affected taxing units. So the resolution kind of just sets up that says, hey, we need all of our increment and from all of our allocation areas. So that's the purpose of the resolution here.
Are there any questions on that? And if not, is there a motion?
So we just need a motion to adopt the resolution, and do we need to take any action on the letter?
Once the resolution's approved, it, as Carl had mentioned, that approves the capture of the tax increment, or I'm sorry, it approves the capture of the incremental assessed value for the pay 2025 assessed value. It's typically due June 1st or 15th.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
We like to front load these, so it's all done, it's not done at the last
We
minute.
just do it all
And
at
then-
the same time.
Right.
Okay, I'm just referring to, do we need a separate motion for the tax increment letter?
No, you know, that's,
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have the Library Learning Garden update. Rich, thank you.
Good evening, guys. Here to give a little update on the library gardens. I don't know if you've been by there lately, but we have a bridge, we have a pavilion, we have a lot of sidewalk, we have a partial sundial. So a lot of the improvements are being completed as we speak. Right now, there's a ribbon cutting planned in May that we should be completed well ahead of. There's some landscaping items that still need to be taking place because of the weather, painting of the steel, and some miscellaneous little sidewalks that are missing and some grading. But for the most part, we're getting completed on time and where we're supposed to be at. If anybody has any questions.
Are there any questions? Well, thank you so, oh,
How much is the county library involved in all of this? Finance, financing?
That would be a question for the MOU, which I don't have an idea. I was not a part of that, but that would be a question to look at the MOU that was taking place. But Jesse's in every progress meeting, so his input is taken in quite often, if not more than not.
do we happen to have the MOU on our end, Mr. Bowditch?
I do not have access to that right now, and I'm not aware of it, but I can review it and make sure and get an idea of what that allocation was and breakdown for you.
Sure, thank you. Is that good? Thank you. Oh, and then Judy?
So I know the carport area was struck. Has that affected the construction at all?
It's helped us, because it was closed down, so we took advantage of the parking lot being closed and demoed it and got to move things ahead of schedule. So, yeah, with the unfortunate incident of the U-Haul hitting the carport and closing that entrance, we have taken advantage of it and kind of expedited work in that area.
Thank you.
All right, I think that's good. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So, Mayor and the members of the commission, the reason why I had asked Rich to come and give that presentation is because next month in the docket and the claims, there has been submitted a substantial invoice payment request for the project. And so I wanted you to hear where the progress was and where they are at. So thank you very much, Rich, for coming in. So you just didn't get this major $1 million in excess of $1 million pay request without having a report. I'd rather be proactive than having you be
We
reactive.
appreciate that greatly. So, well, Mr. Bowditch, for your report.
So for my report, I do want to spend a little bit of time on the budget that was provided to you. There were a number of revisions that were made, nothing substantial. It was more clarification of different items that were identified. However, there were some changes to what I considered entitled the proposed projects for 2024 and beyond. That's more of a capital improvement planning document for long-term or projects over the next 1 to 3 to 5 years. I did have an opportunity to go through that with the mayor as well as other individuals in the city to determine if those projects were still standing and remove those that weren't a priority for the city and potentially for the Redevelopment Commission. As well as I've completed I wanted you to also have a schedule that showed the 5-year history of tax increment. Carl's still here, so thank you, Carl, for providing all the annual reports. I appreciate that. The annual reports from prior years were used as that source of information. Typically, the tax increment revenue distributions come from the Porter County Auditor on their TIF form, remind me, Carl, TIF form 22, right? I know there's a form 22, but there's a special one, TIF form 22. So I wanted to, so you can see how the allocation distributions have increased over the years and how we were conservative in this year's approach to how we developed an $8 million, a little over $8 million distribution in the allocation fund. I did want to state that the annual report that Carl gave and provided, I did have an opportunity to review that. It was in order, consistent with state statute and all the information that's required. It will be uploaded into the DLGF gateway system for the public to view. The parcels will be uploaded also into the gateway system for anybody need to identify the TIF reviewer in that system. And that's useful for looking up any information as far as allocation areas or redevelopment commission budgeting or information throughout the state. There is let me see here on my list of items here. We'll make sure, and to respond to Commissioner Latch's question on the TIF notices and the overlapping units, we'll make sure that they are notified and sent the information according to state statute, and we'll make sure that the Porter County Auditor is sent the resolution as well as the determinations in the annual report. The auditor does not need the annual report, but it doesn't hurt to send it as long as we're sending a packet down there. I did have an opportunity to meet with Andy Miletta as the Executive Director of the Portage Economic Development Corporation. The proposed development of the Dayton Street Partners land that is on I-94. That project is stalled, but there is a potential for another prospect to use that site, and they would be looking for potential development, if not this year, but early next year, so that they can open in 2025. So there was a good opportunity there. Andy and I met with the IEDC representative, Matt Saltanovitz, and we're putting together a team of individuals up front to work on the project and put all the information together so that they can access potentially state grants, state incentives, and we can come to the city with any request for tax increment financing similar to the DSP project and get that land developed that is currently vacant. In addition, there were before I go to the budget, there were three requests that came before you that need to be addressed during this meeting. The one is a agreement, basically a master general agreement with Butler, Fairman, and Seifert. The mayor may go into a little bit more detail, but I did want to give you an overview very quickly. Butler, Fairman, and Seifert met with the city in discussions to prepare a Safe Streets for All grant. It is a United States Department of Transportation grant. In general, it is a program that is $1 billion set aside annually for cities to prepare action plan documents for roads, bicycle, traffic, vehicle safety throughout the city to identify any areas that may need improvement or may need safety improvements. So this grant typically costs between anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. I've done them in the past. It's submitted. Your chances of success, I can't say is 100%, but I've never heard anybody turn down. So it's the grant to prepare the action plan, which in the city of Portage may come to be anywhere between $300,000 and $400,000. The city would be responsible for 20% of that. So it's a good deal. Once you have that project, it identifies the capital improvement projects that are necessary, which can be in the millions, and then you can submit an additional grant for those projects. The cost that was submitted was $2,500. So I would support that. You're getting a great deal, believe me. I couldn't do it for $2,500, and I would turn it down. I know that's a good deal. Another issue that will be brought before you is Americo. That is a request for approval for a well closure at 5439 Central Avenue, which is in the Southport allocation area, for the closure of a well system that needs to be completed in relation to the West Central Avenue project. So I would support that. I've looked into it. The cost is acceptable, and that'll be before you. The third is the mayor and I and Tom Cherry met with a a current owner of property in the north side. And the individual is interested in selling his property to the Redevelopment Commission for redevelopment. And so the request there is, and we have the money in the budget for this, for appraisals, but the request is for the board to approve for Bill Ratchin to get the necessary appraisals in order to determine the cost of that property to make a reasonable offer to the current property owner. So before I go into the budget, if there's any questions on anything so far. It's been a busy month. Yes?
Where is this land?
It is on the north side. There's no address associated with it. I mean, there is an address, but it wouldn't give you a specific location. But if you were to, it's south of the private marina, east of the Little Calumet River stem, and north of where the river split. So it's back in that area where there was boat storage, but it's on the west side.
I can tell you that the person who's interested in selling it, he put it very nicely. He said that he no longer wishes to pay taxes on a piece of land that he cannot, like, physically get to. And the interesting thing when it comes to it is it borders land owned by our Port Authority, and it is not far away from land owned already by the Redevelopment Commission. So
Right.
it is to say it's, for our perspective, it's
Right.
more interesting to us than it is to him.
Right. And it is in the interest of the Redevelopment Commission to assemble the land that is available in that area, because not only that area has a number of parcels, but also just south of the Burns Waterway and the Little Calumet River, it's also a nebulous area of many, many parcels. So any opportunity where a property owner is a willing seller to come to you to sell their property, it's your advantage to take advantage. It's in your benefit to take advantage of that. Oh, you're welcome. You are welcome. So
So I have a question. What
Yes.
would be the advantage to
Pardon?
purchase that? What would be the advantage for,
the Redevelopment Commission?
Yes.
The advantage is it's part of the north side opportunity and development for the plan of the Redevelopment Commission as its north side plan for development. But it's in the advantage to purchase that property as the Redevelopment Commission, because then you hold site control of what occurs in the future. Right now, other property owners can come to the city and the Redevelopment Commission and then to the city and ask for development to occur, which may not be consistent with your plan entirely, but it's consistent with the general outline of the plan and the zoning ordinance, which may not be what you're targeting for the area.
Put it like this, right now, as Dan mentioned, there's kind of like all these different little properties with like different owners. It gets a little bit weird over there. You've got properties that are, I mean, I don't know if there's some that are slightly bigger than the desk that Mr. Bowditch is sitting at.
Yes.
But if you think of it like us, kind of like a puzzle piece, the more that there's one property owner, and in this case, the redevelopment commission, buying it, it gives us the ability to lead for that land to be developed. Right now, if somebody wanted to build a hotel there, if somebody wanted to put a restaurant over there, well, first off, you need a road. We'll get to that one day, but they would have to hunt down all the different property owners and get them all on board to unite them and sell it. Whereas if we gradually, work towards getting a hold of that, it gives us one piece of land that we can work with, or that we could sell to somebody else to work with, rather than someone else having to go through the trouble of getting them all together.
And it was less than an acre. It was not a large parcel. And just to give you a point of reference, the taxes on the property, I believe, were $2,100. So it's not a large piece of property, but as we all know, if that one piece of property can stall a major project and hold out for a lot of money, and the property owner wants to sell it, so willing seller, willing buyer, let's buy
Have
it.
you come up with a cost?
He did not, but he did say a reasonable price, and I'll consider it. So that's why we'd like to get the appraisals, to determine what that reasonable price would be.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Any other questions?
Before I go on to the budget, and I don't want to spend too much time.
Yeah.
But I did, so before you is the Redevelopment Commission budget for 2024. I have gone through, exhaustively looked at it. Please understand, it is not based on a tax levy or tax dollars that are received. It's based upon the general fund being your fund as dollars that are used, that are available from sale of property or interest or any value in property you may have, whether it's real property or equipment. So what you'll see is your revenues for your general fund. And what I've tried to do to take a step back is you have two sets. The cover sheet is more of a summary for you to get a general idea of the budget itself. The supporting documents behind it are more of a detail of each one of those categorized revenues, as well as the expenditures that were shown. And for the general fund, it also includes the cost of the 6100 NERPS, the 6100 Southport building, or known as NERPC. But what we did do is look at any balance that was rolled over from last year, any rents, land sales, or other revenues, and that revenue generated estimate is about $1.716 million just in the general fund. So what we did look through is identify those projects that impact the redevelopment area, which is coterminous and with the entire city of Portage. Because your allocation fund can only be used on projects that are in or serving the allocation area, or for services that are allocated that, for example, you would have salaries as there's a reimbursement to the city, because individuals, and I'll go through that, are doing redevelopment work on behalf of the Redevelopment Commission, and we reimburse the city for that. So we have to be careful on how we use the general fund, so that, as well as the allocation fund. That's why we bifurcate them and have them separate. So we did go through and we looked at department operation expenses just for the year. We looked at equipment purchases right now under the general fund. That would be zero. But there may be a cost in the future that you may want to budget from other funds. Event sponsorship, membership, promotional, grant, matching funds, that would be, for example, if there's any funds out there that need to be matched, like the Safe Streets for All, we can use that. Professional services, property management, supplies, travel, which is zero, utilities, and payroll allocations to the city. So that's where you can see where the payroll allocations come into play. And then you can see how the 6100 Southport NERPC building expenses are separated. So you can see how that building is being operated and managed from a financial perspective. You'd have the property management, utilities, and insurance. In either case, and this has been done historically in the past, under the general fund, there's been a recommended capital reserve to be rolled over into the next year's balance of $500,000. And then you have on the Southport NERC building, a capital reserve set aside of $150,000. That doesn't mean that you couldn't use that, but it's good financial practice to set aside those funds every year for the purpose of any future costs or making sure that there are funds available. I wouldn't recommend spending down the dollars. So at the bottom, you could see that the total expenditures are $1.7 million. So after your revenues minus in expenses, it's a difference, and I'm going to round, of about $9,750. However, I wanted to add back the capital reserve so you can see that potentially if this budget were, your general fund budget were to be used in totality in this fiscal year, you'd have a rollover of about $660,000 to next year. And then that shows because this year you had a rollover of about $1 million. So you're a little bit short, but you're doing projects from your general fund. And at the bottom, I put in there a test. The intent is to have a $1 million rollover every year. The only reason why I used the $1 million was because that's what was rolled over last year. If there is going to be a specific policy, I'll amend that number, and if it's greater than the amount of the fund balance on January 1st, 2025, that box will return to a yes and show green. So you'll see that in the allocation area. So before I go on to the allocation fund, are there any questions on the general fund? Yes.
What comprises the other revenues?
So any other revenues would be potentially, let's see here, let me look. So other revenues, that would be on the general fund, on the sheet subsequent to that first sheet. That includes bank interest, tax abatement fees, utility reimbursements, or miscellaneous. Now miscellaneous is, I put $500 in there just as an estimate. That's in case someone donates money to the Redevelopment Commission. And just so everybody knows what tax abatement fees are, if the city, or if or when the city approves an economic revitalization area assessed valuation deduction or tax abatement, the city by ordinance imposes a 15% fee on the tax savings realized by that company. So if a company realizes $100,000 of savings, they receive, it's on their tax bill, that they have to pay $15,000 to, as part of their tax bill, as an imposed fee. The auditor summarizes and puts all those together and then distributes those funds to the Redevelopment Commission because the ordinance directs those funds to go to the Redevelopment Commission for discretionary purposes. You use it for what you want.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Any other questions on the general fund? So let's move over to the allocation area. So the allocation area this year had a rollover of about $7.5 million. Typically I'm conservative, having worked with accountants and with Carl would agree. Accountants are very risk adverse and conservative in our approach. So the amount of tax increment that I estimated was a little over $8 million. It's about a 1% increase. In fact, on the tax increment collected sheet, it's 0.1% increase. Because we never know what is going to happen. There may be a major appeal by one of the property owners that could cause tax increment to be less, or a property owner doesn't pay their taxes. The company goes bankrupt, so we'd rather be conservative in that amount. Now, the total estimated revenues are $19,618,000. And then we looked at expenditures. So the expenditures, of course, there are obligations and debt service. I verified these with information that Senator and Dalton provided in their annual report, as well as looking up the bond documents and debt service schedules. The total amount of the debt service and obligations is $4,381,000. Equipment purchases are any purchases for equipment to be used in the allocation area or serves the allocation area, $15,000. Grants to entities, $310,000. Those are typically grants in the past, in 2022 and 2023. The Redevelopment Commission has granted $75,000 to the police, to the fire and to the park departments to assist in purchasing equipment that would serve the allocation area. One note of this year, the police department didn't spend all their allocated dollars last year, and they had a substantial amount left. So this year, we budgeted for $90,000. So we gave, believe me, you're saving money. So the intent is to provide for a $90,000 grant for the police, but if we were to carry their balance forward, it would be substantially more. Under matching grant funds, basically $2.2 million. Those are matching grants for capital projects that are of an INDOT nature where you have to have a 20% match. Professional services, $103,000. Capital projects, $6,222,000. Those are the capital projects that have been identified for payment in this, for this fiscal year. And miscellaneous real estate, $187,000. That is based upon the, let me get my sheet out. That is based upon real property land purchases, any marketing, title work, property taxes, legal notices, or appraisals, which I had mentioned before is in the budget for the Redevelopment Commission to provide for appraisal information. The total of the expenditures is estimated to be about $13,416,000, with a balance on December 31st of $6,201,500. Now, one of what I've noticed in past budgets is it does take into account the debt service payments that are due in January, which total $2,179,000. So, in essence, the estimated rollover would be $6.2 million, but we want to account for those debt service payments that would be due in January 2025. So the fund balance estimated on January 31st, 2025 would be a little over $4 million, $4,021,000. And this is from prior years. Prior years' test for carryover was $2 million. I upped that to $4 million. So basically, the intent this year is to have $4 million carried over to the next year. So if you were to ask the question, I try to answer your questions before you ask. This year's carryover was $7.5 million. Then why are we not having a higher level of carryover for next year? Because there are a number of projects, such as the library garden, that hit hard. Those were large projects. So if we were to add those projects back and didn't do those, you probably would have about almost $7 to $7.5 million rollover. So if there's any questions on the allocation fund, I'd be more than happy to answer those. This has been reviewed by the clerk treasurer. She did make some recommendations on breaking it out for her purposes, and we did do that, and we do show those. In fact, we do show in the allocation area and the general fund, the breakdown of the payroll, as well as how the allocated services of that payroll was estimated. And I show it in my notes, so you have that. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy.
To start, thank you so much for all the work and the time that you put into this, Dan. It's an incredible job. It takes a whole lot of effort.
Well, it's taken a lot of time.
And you have done so much research. You've met with the department heads. You've met with me. I appreciate it. But if there are any questions from the board?
So before you say this
Before I ask if
yes,
there's
I do have one more comment, and I did mention this to Commissioner Ambler, that the intent is to have this updated monthly in working with Sonia. Lindgren, as well as to show not only what the budgeted amount is, but what the amount that has been expended to date, and then have a percentage, so you'll be able to see that. And each month, what I'll do is I will send this to, have Sonia send it to you in an Excel spreadsheet that'll be locked, so you can't change any of the values. I learned that in my life. Because sometimes people want to play with the cells, and then it gets all wonky. So that way you can look at it and see it in the Excel spreadsheet, and you can even see the proposed projects or the tax increment well, the tax increment calculations really wouldn't change until June and December. But you can see proposed projects as they're added and changed for long-term. But you'll be able to see it, and then for your meetings, the thought was that you would receive the summary sheets of both of them, because you'd have all the background before that. And that way you can keep it simple and straightforward for you.
Thank you so
That ends my
much.
presentation on the budget. I'm sorry I took a little bit longer
It
than I
was
anticipated.
absolutely worth it because, it's good to have that all. And like you say, I think
Yes.
you answered a lot of questions, before they came.
Yes,
Are
and we
there
made some
other-
hard decisions on projects, so,
Yeah.
Do we need a motion to adopt the budget?
yes.
I'll make a motion to adopt the budget.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. I will make sure that Clerk Treasurer Modesto receives the PDF document, and she can enter that into her system. So as she receives requests and doc claims, those can be paid because there'll be a budget. Thank you very much. That's the end of my report.
Thank you so much.
I have one more question.
Sure.
I noticed that the budget that was sent online
Mhm.
and the new budget that was printed for us today, like, the one that was printed for us today says allocation area fund number 445. They're different.
They're different numbers. Good observation. So that was one of the recommendations that came out of reviewing it with the clerk treasurer. She said your fund numbers are incorrect. They were taken off an old report. So either the fund numbers were changed. Those are the correct fund numbers now. Yes, everything is correct. Very good observation.
I have a question. So I noticed that the Portage Township Schools will be receiving $100,000 for technology.
So it does, and we've had this conversation, it does show it in I want to go back and look at, it shows as an estimate, which means it's in the budget, but I didn't move it over. In fact, I believe now on the budget, it was moved over to does it show as I want to go through and look at it so I can make sure. I want to make sure that it was moved over. Let's see here. Oh, I'm looking in the wrong fund. Bear with me here, I apologize, but I want to make sure I give you the correct answer. The Portage Town, it was moved over to the budgeted amount, yes. It was in the estimate or unfunded, only because what needs to be done, and this is current with past practice in other communities, and the mayor met with the school today? Yes, and this was discussed. The schools need to make a formal request in a letter, a documented format, to not only request the funds, but justify the equipment or the programs that will be funded through the grant. And I would recommend this because you want to ensure that the dollars you're granting are used for projects and programs that are impacting the allocation area or serving the allocation area. If the school takes those funds because it's a Portage Township school, and those funds are used to pave a lot in a school that's not in the city of Portage, that's a poor use, and you might get called out on that by the State Board of Accounts.
And in our meeting today with the schools, we talked about how what we could do coming up is, not that this would be the only thing they could apply for, but we could meet and kind of give a list of examples of things that would pass, so that way it can help them prepare, because we want them to be able to get it and use it. We want that to be as efficient as possible.
So I believe in the notes and in fact, let's see here, Portage Town. It says grant request and plan for use of the grant funds to be submitted to the Redevelopment Commission. So if they're,
So as the Vice President of the Portage Township School Board, I want to write a letter right now.
And what I could do is, I've prepared these grant programs for other schools and redevelopment commissions. I can give you an example of what that may look like, so that, because we want to make sure, I want to make sure that what you're granting funds for are being used for the appropriate qualified purposes, instead of just saying, we're granting you this money for what? We don't, yeah.
Thank
So
you.
I'll get that over to you.
Appreciate
You're welcome.
that.
Good question.
Thank you. Attorney Bartnicki?
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Glad to see you all, commissioners, mayor. Couple quick items. Number one, what's on everybody's mind, as always, is the World's Finest Chocolate Subcommittee, and the negotiations for the purchase and sale agreement are moving forward. And we've included some language and terms that are intended to foster a spirit of collaboration between the Redevelopment Commission and World's Finest Chocolate. I've been exchanging information with their designated attorney as recently as 2 hours ago. So the subcommittee work continues, and I just wanted to let everybody know that we're still charging forward on that. Looking at 6100 Southport, I've also been able to conclude the lease negotiations for all 3 tenants. So I have also prepared a list of landlord watch items that I will work with staff on. These are just things that, as the leases have been updated, there's some new things that we have to kind of keep an eye on over at 6100 Southport. So I will share that list and discuss with staff to ensure that the Redevelopment Commission is upholding our end of the leases as the landlord. And also, I've received an in-the-works management agreement with Holiday Properties, who manages our holdings at 6100 Southport. And this was a proposed revision from about 2022 that never ended up getting negotiated or signed. So I plan to provide legal guidance to the staff and submit an updated contract to Holiday Properties, or possibly discuss with staff some additional management issues and tasks. So those are just some things going on legally for the RDC. And that concludes my report, nice and quick.
Thank you so much, Dan. Any other questions? All right, Mr. Astron.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I have one short item, which has already been partially discussed tonight. I've been asked to initiate a process to value the land on the north side, the parcel that was discussed. It is a quarter-acre piece of land. As the buyer, and Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but our process as a public entity is we have to establish 2 independent appraisals on the property, and then we can pay no more than the average of those 2 appraisals. So that's the process we're at now. I'd like to ask for a motion tonight if we can authorize the execution of the 2 appraisal service agreements, tentative attorney review of the agreements.
This is
and
the
it-
proposal Mr. Bowditch talked about earlier.
Yes. Yeah,
I'll make a motion.
it'd be $4,000. I guess that'd be important to have in the motion.
I'll make a motion to approve it for $4,000.
I second.
All in favor? Oh, do we have any discussion, or I think we're good? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I can't say, Mayor, it is in your budget.
Yeah. All right, so then jump into consideration, Development Economic Finance Consulting LLC, Dan Bowditch.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
That's quite okay. So, sorry?
Just a quick note. So item number 8.1 under new business, just to let the record reflect this, that was a 5-0 approval vote to approve the RDC budget. So that kind of happened during the committee report. So we've already done 8.1, just pointing out
Sure.
for Sonia's sake more than anything that we already have a vote for that one, so. Yeah.
Thank you. So, yeah, so 8.2 is consideration of DEFC LLC, Dan Bowditch.
In general, that is my agreement to provide administrative as well as economic development financial services to the Redevelopment Commission, and working with not only the city staff, but as well as working with Senator Dalton on their reporting, as well as working with other individuals and engineers to have projects done, and to make sure that you receive your budget documents, and to make sure that at the meetings we are progressing on projects. I would appreciate consideration, and I will say it is in your budget.
Attorney Bartnick, you had the chance to look over this.
I
We're all
did have
good.
the chance, and actually, Mr. Bowditch and I had a couple discussions about the contents, and there is no legal objection, so.
I feel it would be like extraordinarily like unethical to like suddenly like throw Mr. Bowditch under the bus, is all I can say.
I
Are there-
would tend to agree with that, by the way, so.
Especially since we did the budget first before we approved this contract, now that I think about it. Do we have any other questions? And if not, is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
I may be the only consultant that is very trusting on a handshake, and your word is your word, so we'll go by that. But you have to have the legal document in place, so thank you
Yeah.
for working with us.
Oh, my pleasure.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Congratulations.
And now I can send you an invoice for services.
Oh, I'm so excited. So, 8.3 award, I'm sorry, how do we pronounce this word?
Fragmites.
Fragmites Control at 6100 Southport Road.
Good evening. In your packet, I believe there was a recommendation from our department for not only the award of the Phragmites control, but also the other items on the agenda regarding landscape maintenance. I can discuss those if you'd like, or if y'all have had an opportunity to review that.
Were there any questions or comments?
Yeah, is it possible for us to table these items to allow the city a chance to review what we might want to take on ourselves?
Of course.
I'd like to table items 8.3, 8.4, 8.5, 8.6, 8.7, and 8.8.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion to that? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. And then what number does that put us at, Sonia? Sorry. Thank you. So 8.9, reward RFQ for ecological maintenance restoration.
Hi, again, in your packet, you should have seen a recommendation letter from our department. The recommendation was to award the project to Davy Resource Group for the amount of $32,400.
Are there any questions? And if not, is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second?
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So then we get to 8.10, open quotes for North Side Trail maintenance.
We actually received two quotes for the North Side Trail maintenance. Our first one is from Lakeshore Landscaping out of Valparaiso, Indiana. Lakeshore Landscaping's proposal is for $37,454.57. And our second quote is from Barry of Lockport, Illinois. Beary. And the amount that Berry Landscape Management has proposed is $15,845.
Excuse me, that was 15 and not 50.
15845.
Thank you.
obviously, the department would recommend that that the commission would take these under advisement.
Make a motion to take these under advisement.
I'll second it.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. 8.11, consideration general engineering contract with BF&S. Mr. Graylick, would you like to come up? Sure. This was already referenced by Mr. Bowditch, but I guess if we had any questions or anything, for it.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. The first item there is just a general services agreement so that all the legal terms are in place for any services that you need.
And I would make a recommendation to support the approval of not only the general conditions, the master agreement, but as well as task number 1 to prepare the Safe Streets for All grant.
And also, I was provided a pre-copy of this during the week. I've done a legal review. There's no objection should the commissioners decide to approve the agreement. And I have copies here for signature, should you approve it.
Make a motion to approve the agreement.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Mayor, it is in your budget to pay for this, so.
Thank you so much. And then we need the motion, I believe, to do the task order. Would that be correct, as proposed? How does that work?
Let's see.
Probably a good idea.
Yes, we do have to, let's do, I would recommend that there also be a second motion for the task order itself.
Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Yeah, do we have a second?
A second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We have 8.12, consideration 2024 landscape maintenance for 6100 Southport Road, Lakeshore Landscaping.
Make a motion to table that item.
I'll second that.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We have, I'm going to jump to 9.1, if that's okay. Consideration well closure, 5439 Central Avenue, Americo.
I had referenced this under my report to you. This came before us as an additional, I don't want to say last minute, but it's something that needs to be done within a time period as it relates to another project. I believe, Sandy, if there's any more detail that needs to be made.
If y'all have questions,
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless
But I would
there-
recommend
oh,
approval.
Unless there's any other questions, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And it is within your budget.
Thank you. I feel like I need like a little bell each time.
Well,
like,
you
it's in
know
the
what?
budget, like,
It's good to know.
it's appreciated, trust me. So,
Again, Mayor Bonta, just to protect the record, I did have a chance to look over this one also. This one was late breaking, but I did look at it, and there was no legal objection, so I'm glad we've had, and it's fine.
great. Are there any other business that the commission deems necessary? Would you like to say something?
I would like to say something, sure.
Could you keep it ideally within 2 minutes?
I can try.
Because the trouble is, I just love hearing you speak, so like, if you go longer, but I want to, yeah.
We can go for days, I know. I was gonna pass this out, is this counting as my time?
No.
No.
So it's just something I've been working on, for a long time. Had some discussions with other people about.
Thanks.
May I? Thank you.
So I think I know most of you, or either formally or informally, but for those of you that are unfamiliar, I'm Jake. I'm from the Portage Recovery Association. We have recovery-based meetings and sober events for the community of Portage. So this will be the third time I've come to the Redevelopment Commission over the last 6 years. Basically, asking about this building. I came and talked with Mayor Snyder in 2018, Mayor Lynch last year. I've had small conversations with Mr. Bonta a couple times. I think that I have the best idea for this community. I think that if we want Portage to get better, that Portage has to support Portage. And I worked a long time with a lot of people, putting in major details of what I think that this building that's been sitting mostly vacant for the last 6 years can be done something with. I think with all the other projects going on in Portage, that I'd be happy to take this thing off the hands of the Redevelopment Commission. Willing to give, I just want an opportunity. Basically, I'm up here today to ask for an opportunity to get another tour of the facility with members of the Redevelopment Committee and Mayor Bonta to share my vision of the organization with them in person. I understand that that building needs lots of work. It's a day-at-a-time project. I'm not looking to go in there with millions of dollars. I'm looking to go in there with a few grand, start with one room, and work our way out. I think that this is going to bring millions of dollars to the city over the next 10 years. And I'll give a quick example of how I feel one runway would be. So what is that place in Maryville that got torn down? Not the Radisson, the Radisson?
Radisson.
So there used to be state conferences there for recovery-based organizations, and they would have, before it was gone, they had this really cool state convention. There'd be 5,000 to 7,000 people there every year over a 4-day weekend. So let's say, hypothetically, half those people paid for a hotel for a couple days. That's $750,000. Every one of them had to eat. That's well over $250,000. Now add in cigarettes, gas, other things. I think that those events in Maryville were $1 million to $1.5 million weekends for the city. Unfortunately, when that was torn down, those conferences went back down to Indy, they went back down to Fort Wayne. There's no willingness to bring things like that back up here because there's really nowhere to do it. I think this building potentially within 5 years could be a destination place for that. And I think that I'm dedicated, and I understand that there's problems with this building. But I also think just drugs and alcohol is a problem in the city, and I think it needs to be discussed, and I have a solution.
Can I ask you something, Jake?
Yes, sir.
Have you watched The Bells of St. Mary's yet?
No, I have not.
That was a very specific thing I asked you to do the last time we talked. Could you do it between now and this, unless
I've seen the movie.
It's a wonderful
many times.
movie, right?
Oh, I'll tell you a story after this about that movie.
So if we'd like to take a look at this, and I just got to say, there are a few organizations in the city that work as hard and have done so much good as the Portage Recovery Association. Rather than us kind of going back and forth here, what would be the best way if we wanted to meet more formally with Jake, his organization? Could we do like a subcommittee to talk about the building or where we can go from there? And I guess, is that just a motion here to formally create?
You can create a subcommittee, I guess, or a committee of the
I mean, I guess I could just
commission.
meet with you and him. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no rules about that. It's just, is there anything we need to do to formally start a process of working on what we could do here?
Not right now. Schedule a meeting between you and I and maybe one of the other commission members to meet with Jake.
Yeah.
I'd use your last name, but I didn't catch your last name.
Monhout, Monhaut.
Thank you.
Jake, we can get a meeting scheduled with you unless there's
I-
particular advice on the legal side.
If the commission is looking at actually forming an official subcommittee to explore possibilities for the Garrison School, I would say that I would prefer to hear a motion and have that motion passed to form the subcommittee, which would be a member or two of staff and then no more than 2 commissioners, very similar to last month, like we did for the World's Finest Chocolate Subcommittee. If the vision is more of an informal, just staff process, then I would say we don't need that, but since subcommittee was brought up, that would be the topic for a motion.
I think that it's really important we have some resolution to this, whether it's the building or whether it's some other way. I just think that it's, for all the things that redevelopment does, I think that really taking a look at this issue in our community and working with a partner who's willing to work, I think something a little bit more formally structured, so it's not just, I don't want to run into a pattern where we're constantly having meetings, then we get delayed. It'd be good to have something that we could report back on, so I think maybe a subcommittee.
Yeah, it sounds
would
to
be
me like
the-
a subcommittee is what you're really thinking of, so I would say the commission should probably entertain a motion to form a subcommittee to look into the Garrison School possibilities for the Portage Recovery Association, if somebody would want to, move that.
I'll make a motion to,
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And then to protect the record, I would say you'd probably want to appoint 2 commissioners to serve on the subcommittee with various staff members that may be needed from time to time.
Unless somebody else would like to, jump in, it's kind of like Hunger Games, if somebody wants to do the volunteer switch out. Commissioner Lack and Ambler, would you guys be interested in being the 2 on this subcommittee? Oh, I thought it could be 2 members on the
Well,
subcommittee. Is it
and
just,
it-
I'm sorry, it has to be 2?
Only 2, because once we have 3, that's a quorum,
meeting.
and we're violating,
Oh, no.
yeah,
Could-
open door, yeah.
I actually forgot for that purpose. I must think this is a city council meeting.
That's why we're
Since
here.
I'm
We
not a
got you,
vote-
we got you.
Yeah, we have your
Since-
back.
Since I'm not a voting member, would you consider having me as part of that committee?
Awkward, actually, if Wilma came too, would she also be contributing towards that rule? Or because she's a non-voting member?
So that's something I'll have to look up. So for right now, I would say let's have, my recommendation would be no more than 2 voting members, and I will get back to you very quickly on a non-voting member. That's a good question. Thank you.
I feel like I should be on it, not, as mayor to be able to coordinate with staff or it will get awkward. Penny and Greg, do you guys want to arm wrestle or what would be the best way to do this?
It's all yours, Penny.
Okay, so Penny, so
I'm
thank
all
you so
stacked
much.
up on subcommittees.
All right, we'll get to you and we'll get that set up.
And I would recommend doing some due diligence on the property and getting information available.
Absolutely.
And meeting before we even schedule a meeting with the,
I'm just here to talk, I don't expect any major results either, I just.
Oh, dude, no, you're
I just
coming to
like
these
to have
meetings and we're going to get
conversation.
something figured out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I have a solution.
Thank you for your persistence.
I believe even though redevelopment owns the building, it is not in the allocation area.
Is that good or bad
that's
for me?
part of our due diligence. That's part of the due diligence to make sure.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for your time. I'll stick around.
Any other comments? And if not, is there a motion to close the meeting?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.